Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. We are just getting set here with tonight's special guest is going to be Rachel Lester from the IDF's spokespersons unit, which I'm very excited about. It's a very cool unit. And Thursday night we like to do things that are a little different. Last week we had the coach from the YU basketball team, and so that's different than our usual political or rabbinic guests. And tonight I think we're going to also have something very different. We're going to have Rachel Lester, who's the creative director of the IDF spokespersons unit. You're going to hear what that is and what the IDF spokespersons unit does, and Rachel's personal story, which is somewhat fascinating. And if you have questions, you can feel free to throw them in. I can see them in the comment section here. So we're gonna, it should be a fun and interesting night where we get to hear about something that we don't really necessarily get to see that often, which is the spokesperson's unit of the IDF we see it all the time. We see that they're the ones that we get to watch and where we get our information from. But just very curious as to what the whole purpose of a spokesperson's unit is. And a military is a defense force, the Israeli Defense Forces. That's one of the questions I want to know about. Rachel's personal life is a fascinating story. This is not the usual Israeli that joins the army and after 18 years and graduates high school and joins the army right away. She has a much more telling story, fascinating, really fascinating life story. And just to hear about her time in the army, her time post the army, and what this is, what it's really all about in terms of the spokesperson's unit. She can't speak, ironically enough, on behalf of the spokesperson's unit, even though she works in the spokesperson's office. But so there's certain things that she's going to be able to say and certain things that she's not going to be able to say. But I think just hearing, I think that for most of us, just getting an insight into the Israeli Defense Forces is a treat. But that's something that we look forward to always, to hearing about the IDF and hearing about how the inner operations work as much as possible. Again, we're not talking about like secret missions here, but I think the IDF has a special place in all of our hearts. It's a place that we, it's sort of a team that everyone jumps on, the bandwagon that everyone wants to be a part of. We want to help it in any way, shape, or form, and we want to gravitate towards it and see how it works and see is there a role for us. And I think that's really one of the best parts of Rachel's story, is that she's the type of person that went out and wanted to find her role in the army, and see how she could help out. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to be able to really grasp hold of. This has been an exciting week, and here's Rachel now. So she's joining us. That's Rachel talking about you before you came on. And, okay, so we're joined with Rachel. Rachel, before we get started, we have a certain tradition, sort of. I mean, this whole program is only 2-3 weeks old, so it's not like our traditions are so ingrained. But one thing I like to do is start off by making a bracha, give everybody a chance to answer amen, and start off the right way. So I got a cup of coffee here. I got to make a bracha on it. Now you and everybody else can answer amen, and then we'll get started. So
Amen.
All right. Okay. So I see we got a whole LA crew signing on, watching, whole Miami crew watching. We've got people from all over the world watching, people in Israel watching. So it's great. Rachel, before you came on, I gave a little background, a small look at you. And I told everybody how this isn't like, you're not the average person that graduates high school. The average Israeli that graduates high school and then gets drafted right into the IDF and finds herself somehow in the spokesperson's unit. Your story is a little more compelling, a little more fascinating. And so if you could share with us a little of your background, your responsibilities, your current position, what led you here. And if I knew how to play a video here, I'd play my favorite video of all time. But I as much as I tried, I didn't want to. I want to risk it playing only for me and everybody else just listening to me, sit there and watch it. But please tell us your background.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Pilachowski, not only for having me, but for all of the kind words. So hi, all of Rabbi Pilachowski's followers. I'm Rachel Lester. I am from LA. My background is, I hope it's as interesting as Rabbi Pilachowski made it out to be. So I went to Shalhevet High School. I went to Jewish school my whole life. Hillel, Shalhevet. I was always, pro-Israel, but I was never particularly one of the more Israel advocacy type students. I went to USC, where I started by majoring in cognitive science. I didn't think I was ever going to go. I didn't have any connection to the video world besides just kind of as a hobby. And then I decided to minor in digital studies, where I basically just expanded on my skills of video editing. And I think my whole career trajectory kind of started when I had a class project to make a video combining two completely unexpected subjects. I chose to make a video about Harry Potter and Israel. It went a bit viral, and that's how I started my title as Israel Video Girl, as a lot of people know me as. And then a couple months after that, the Israel Video Network was hosting their first ever international video contest. I submitted your favorite video as my entry that I made during winter break on my laptop at home, against like a bunch of, production companies, Hasbro companies. And I like really gave it my all, and I won the contest. And that was like kind of really opened my, I guess, my life to becoming really into the Hasbro world, into the pro-Israel advocacy world. I never went to seminary, or I never spent a year in yeshiva. I had only been to Israel once before I went on birthright, and then I ended up going back kind of every year until I made aliyah. I took a semester off of college to volunteer with an army program, and then from then really cemented my reputation as an Israel lover. And by the time that I was the reason that I decided to make aliyah is actually probably more of an interesting story than even you have potentially ever heard. Because of the video that I made that won this contest, I got invited as a guest to be at the Christians United for Israel summer convention, where they played my video on a loop the whole conference. And so I was one of like 5 Jews at a conference of thousands of Christians. And I met one of the only other I met this kippah wearing Jew in a sea of thousands of Christians, who was there actually representing the IDF delegation. And we started a conversation, what are you doing here? We're both Jewish, whatever. And the thing that I took from that was when he said, like, I love my life. I love my wife, family, kids, everything I've ever done professionally, my community. I love everything about my life. But the one thing I regret is not serving in the IDF when I could. That was the summer before I was going to become a senior in college. And I left that conversation thinking, I never want to regret not serving in the IDF while I can. So I went back for my senior year at USC. A couple weeks into the school year, I started calling Israel drafting programs. I started calling, Green Sabar, Nefesh B'Nefesh. And just once I started making the phone calls, there was never really a question about it, honestly. I remember like several months into that year, I went to a group of my friends and I said, all right, guys, I have an announcement. And they were like, one of them was like, you're moving to Israel and joining the IDF. And I was like, yep, that's exactly what's happening. So I made aliyah in the summer of 2017, and I was super fortunate. I was the luckiest Ola Chadasha that has ever made aliyah. I got everything handed to me really easily. I dealt with the bureaucracy pretty well. My goal was to draft into the IDF spokesperson's unit as soon as possible, because I knew that what my skill was making videos about Israel, and I wanted to contribute that to the IDF as opposed to anywhere else. And I got very lucky again. I drafted to the IDF 4 months after I made aliyah, and I got an interview and I got a spot in the spokesperson's unit, and I spent the 2 years as a soldier.
By the way, just sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
But which is not easy. That's one of the hardest units. Everybody talks about getting into the special forces unit, but one of the hardest units to get into in the Army is the spokesperson unit. I say that as somebody with a ton of students that that their whole lives were trying to get into that unit and never did. So that's very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, you're making me feel super prestigious. No, the truth is, I have to say I was very qualified. I had a lot of work experience that most people trying to join the Army did not have, and I had a lot of unique viral video experience that most people trying to join the Army obviously don't have. So it was a good fit, and I just got really lucky getting the right interview at the right time. And so I spent 2 years as a soldier in the social media office of the IDF, exactly what I had made aliyah hoping to do. And my job was to make the videos that you guys see on the IDF Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube website. And my goal is basically to just get the world to see what the IDF has to say. And for 2 years, that was my service to this country. And I liked it so much that when it came time to getting released from the Army actually created a position for me to come back as a civilian employee to the Army as this new position, creative director, which means that I managed all of the other video editors in an international office. By the way, when I say IDF social media, I'm talking about English, Spanish, and French, separate from the Hebrew pages. And so now I took a month vacation after I got released, and I came back and started basically the same job, but like just more management and more trying to make things happen on a bigger picture level. And I'm really happy to be there.
So you're not a soldier right now. You work in the unit as a civilian.
Yes.
Okay,
I
interesting.
was a soldier for 2 years. I wore a uniform. I did guard duty on my base. I got called at every hour of the day and night, and I got released from the service of the mental state also of being in the Army. And now I'm a regular person with a job that happens to be on base with all of my friends who are still wearing uniforms, and I'm not.
That's probably I imagine most people find that somewhat fascinating, that on the one hand you wanted to get out of the Army, but on the other hand wanted to be right back into the Army doing the same work.
I didn't really ever want to get out. I never was like counting down. I was kind of the whole end of my service, I was kind of counting down, like dreading, because I was like, oh my God, I only have this many more days that I can make this video happen, or that I can wear a uniform to this base and film this really cool thing. And then my release happened the week of the last round of rockets. So we weren't actually sure that if I was even going to get released, and it was a crazy time. And I kind of wanted to stay. And luckily the rockets subsided the day I got released, but it was a crazy time. Definitely not one of the typical Israelis who's counting down and excited to get out.
Yeah, that's it. And while you were in the Army, and obviously I know the answer to this, but I want everybody else to hear it also. Did you by any chance win any awards or citations for your service?
So I received an award in September for Outstanding Soldier of the Operational Director. Yes, it is quite surprising too. The spokesperson unit is one of the units within the Operational Directorate, responsible for like the planning that goes into operations and stuff like that. And I received the award, and it was a huge honor. And I was even actually selected to give the speech in front of the like few hundred people that were in the audience, and that was like definitely one of the best moments of my life. And I also got another citation like earlier in the year when my mom flew in to surprise me from LA, and she made it for the spokesperson of the IDF giving me a certificate of appreciation. I have actually I have them both hanging up on my wall right there, for my contribution to Operation Northern Shield, which I had prepared for a while before the operation happened. And suffice to say that I had an interesting service, more interesting than most people get to have.
That's good. That's great. So you mentioned something that I just want to focus in on it for a second. You mentioned that you prepared for Operation Northern Shield. So it seems like almost as if the combat soldiers are preparing for it. They might not know that there's an operation coming, but your unit is told ahead of time in order to get the publicity ready for it. Is that true? Does that make sense?
So the spokesperson's unit is just constantly preparing for any number of scenarios. I have made so many videos about a potential scenario that have never even happened, and so the video never went up. But the goal of the spokesperson unit is to be prepared to present Israel's side of the story as quickly as possible. So when it became clear that we were going to be destroying tunnels in Lebanon, somebody had to make the video that was going to announce Hezbollah has been digging tunnels under homes in Israeli land for the past however many years they've been digging tunnels. And this is why you're turning on the news this morning and seeing IDF soldiers are going and destroying tunnels This is the backstory. These are the terrorists involved, and this is what you need to know before you get another side of the story.
Which that's really fascinating, because I have to imagine that when American forces stormed Normandy, or right before the 6-Day War when we attacked Egypt, right? So I have to imagine there was no spokesperson's unit that sat there for 3 weeks ahead of time saying, okay, let's say we do storm Normandy, would we have the rollout video to show people in the newsreels what our side of the story is? So it sounds like is this something unique to the IDF? Is this something unique to modern times, that an army needs to have a narrative that's ready to roll day one, as opposed to just let's defeat the enemy?
I have no idea what other militaries do on their inside, and I'm sure that there are equivalents of other times. I'm sure that when World War I started, I'm sure that various presidents of every country had a press release ready to go, typed up on their little typewriters, ready to announce various scenarios. But this is definitely a modern twist on being prepared for the what we call the digital battlefield.
It's interesting. It's fascinating. And what's the benefit? In other words, let's say I'll give it just a modern example, right? So America assassinates Soleimani in Iraq, right? So he happens to be in Iraq that day. They assassinate. There's no video that comes out from the American military forces, and afterwards there is somewhat confusion. Congress and the Senate are wondering, they're taking their pot shots at the president, wondering why he had to do it. The American military is largely silent, for 2 or 3 days, until finally the Secretary of Defense will come out and give an explanation. So it's almost, is there a reason why when Israel does something, there's a full package ready to go, while other armies are just, and it makes, I would have to say, it's to our benefit, to our credit, meaning to Israel's credit, it seems like we're much better prepared than everybody else, and it comes off as almost like the operation is more professional, because look how much planning went into it.
I like to think so.
There's a full package ready to go, while other armies are just. Do you have your sound on? It makes, I would have to say. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we were hearing the backfield. So does that make us seem more professional? Does it seem like it's like we're better prepared by having these packages ready to go?
I definitely hope that the world sees it that way. I think that it's just a different. Israel is obviously in the most unique situation of any country, because we do not have the luxury of doing anything without a lot of questions and speculation and backlash from various other countries, and the press definitely goes a bit more, pays a lot more attention when Israel does something surprising than when the American army does something surprising. And at the end of the day, the American army doesn't have to fight for their legitimacy as a country, and Israel does, unfortunately. And so as a person who works in PR, it's really important to realize that part of our goal is not only to defeat the enemy on the ground, but also to defeat the enemy of lies, I guess. And so I think when a country does assassinate, when the U.S. did assassinate Soleimani, there was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of hate and questioning why did it happen. But a week later, no one remembered. In Israel, when there's a bad headline, it matters. So our goal is, my goal is for as many people as possible to come out the morning that something happens, check the news, and there's our side of the story ready to understand, to share with their networks, and to not walk around all day thinking that Israel does something that they don't understand and that they don't feel comfortable with, because we are comfortable with our actions, and we are presenting our side of the story,
Okay. And when you do present your side of the story, so what's the goal of the spokesperson's unit? Is it to show, and I know there's only a certain amount that you could talk about, and you're not authorized to, I said that before you got on, how ironic it is that the person from the spokesperson's unit is not authorized to speak on behalf of the spokesperson's unit. But the
person who works there. But I think, the idea of the spokesperson's unit has many different parts of it. There's the part that deal with the foreign press. There's the part that deals with foreign delegations. So, when AIPAC comes to Israel, the soldiers that show them around bases and take them around the country and introduce them to generals and stuff like that. And then there's social media, and the goal is to capture the biggest possible audience and make soldiers look, and show the world what IDF soldiers look like, because outside of our bubble of American Jews, most people in the world have never met an Israeli soldier and don't know what they're like, and turns out they're just like everyone else, real people who like music and Netflix. And then when we're in operational times, to expose the lies of Hamas, to expose the lies of Hezbollah, to warn the world about Iran, stuff that unfortunately a lot of other countries are just not on top of like they should be. And so, I mean, I've gotten very, very familiar with the speeches of Khomeini and Nasrallah and Yahya Sinwar and all those people over the course of my service, the heads of Iran and Hezbollah and the IRGC and Hezbollah and Hamas, and just people that we need to be telling the world about, because people need to hear both the good about Israel and they need to hear about the dangers of the terrorist organizations that we're facing.
Interesting. Okay, great. Okay, so you went to a top-notch American university, UCLA, you said, right? The Bruins, correct?
That's not funny.
Did I get that right?
Nope, not funny, guys.
So you went to a school in the worst part of Los Angeles, USC, and
I didn't know you were so biased. I wouldn't have come on this interview otherwise.
Don't worry. If you were a Bruin, I'd be pushing the Trojans. But if you most people, USC is a real one of the top colleges and one of the top universities in America. Most people, it's not a cheap college at all. Most people coming out of there, they look at it as an investment. So they walk out of USC, they're looking for a top-notch job where they can get a very high salary to pay back their student loans. You took a very different route. Yeah. So making aliyah, joining the IDF. So I know you talked about the route that you took, and you talked about not having to want to regret not serving the IDF. But regret isn't, the fear of regret isn't I don't believe that that's your motivation. What is, there's plenty of things that you could, regret that you didn't get to. All of us in our lives are going to have things that we didn't do. So what is it about the IDF? What is it about making aliyah that really grabbed you and felt that this is something that I really want to do?
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but really a big part of the reason is because I didn't want to regret not serving the IDF. I think I personally believe that any Jew that has the ability to serve the country of the Jewish people should give their time, give their however many years, 1, 2, 3 years of their lives to improving the country, serving the country. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I have so many years of my life to do this or that, not particularly special job or not particularly different city. And there's only a certain age range where I can serve Israel. And that window was closing. If I didn't do it right after I graduated, I would have become too old pretty quickly. As it was, I had to volunteer. A 22-year-old who moves to Israel doesn't have mandatory service. I just think that it's something that, when you look back on your life, when I look back on my life, I'm going to be happy that I did it. And I think a lot of Israeli soldiers who volunteered are going to be happy they did it, even though it was really hard at the time. And you said, most people leave USC wanting to find a top-notch job, but I have the toppest of top-notch jobs that I could imagine, which is why even after my service ended, I chose to stay in the world of the Army and my job. It's definitely, I don't wear a uniform. I'm not doing guard duty. It's definitely better, just as terms of like my everyday life go, but the reason that I still have this job is because I can't imagine anything that I would find more meaningful and more impactful. And how many people in my classes at USC left USC and make videos every single day that reach millions of people for something they care about. I can't imagine taking a job with like a cookie company or a car company selling something I don't care about, but it's the IDF and the job has to be done. And that's also part of what I said about, I realized in college that I have a very unique skill that the world is, that is not too common in the world. Not that many people are great at making videos specifically about explaining Israel's side of the story in a just succinct, easily understandable way. And I think that I have a talent that I wouldn't want to waste when I could be making videos for anyone, but not enough people are doing the job that Israel needs. So I felt like that was really the best place I could use my skills.
That's great. That's great. One of one of the first lessons that I give whenever I have new students in my Israel classes is always trying to explain that that even though you might live far away from Israel, as a Jew, you have a responsibility towards Israel. There has to be some level of caring, and how disappointing it is when you see, especially millennials and soon to be Generation I, and coming into their maturity, and lacking that to such a great extent among American Jewry, where it's no, Israel is just a different country and America is my home. And I remember the first time having a student who said that straight out, who said that no, I feel like Israel's important, but it's not my home, it's not my country, I'm American. And this isn't like somebody who grew up assimilated, but somebody who grew up in the Jewish community, went to Jewish day school, and a very Zionistic day school, with Israeli flags in every classroom, and still felt that America was home, Israel's not home. And it's refreshing to hear somebody say the opposite. And I hope that it's somewhat contagious. I know it's a horrible word to use today, but I hope it does spread.
Well, I have to say, I don't do this out of this feeling of ultra Zionism. Like I said, I wasn't even one of the most typically Zionist people in my high school class. And I don't go around telling everyone to make aliyah and that Israel is the one and only home for Jewish people. And I mean, as well as anyone that I complain about public transportation in Israel and things about daily life that Israel is a regular country. It's not this paradise land. And I think that's important to clarify, that it is just that it's a wonderful place to live in, and that I feel like Jews have a responsibility to serve Israel despite the fact that it's not this utopia, not because we try to pretend that it is.
Yeah, makes sense. We're running out of time here, so I want to focus on something that I know is very important to you: lone soldiers. Soldiers that I think this is a fascinating phenomena that I have to imagine most militaries do not experience, where you have soldiers who come from many different countries, and then go ahead and join the IDF and are all alone here without family and any support system. What are some of the issues that they face?
Oh no, what happened?
We lost you there for a minute. You're back. Okay, no problem.
Great.
Did you hear my question, or would you like me to repeat it?
I just heard you say lone soldiers and then it cut out.
Okay, so lone soldiers, a phenomena that most people, most armies don't have, which are soldiers that fly, from across the world. There's over 5,000 lone soldiers in the Israeli army, fly across no support system whatsoever, and they join the IDF for reasons, like you said, altruistic reasons, or for whatever reason they might have, and they're serving for. What are some of the issues that they face?
So I think in my world of the lone soldier community, I think it's really important to make clear that every lone soldier has different issues. Like you said, there's a lot of lone soldiers that fly from all across the world to serve in the army, and then more than half are Israelis who were born here and aren't in contact with their family and have to navigate this whole system, speaking perfect Hebrew but not having a warm home to come home to, and so there's problems from anything from financial problems, people who don't come into the army with enough savings to get by. There's people who just don't have the support system to come home and manage to do all of the laundry, the cooking, the shopping, the cleaning, the fixing the things that broke in their apartment on their own. And then there's just the regular people like me who come from a very supportive family who I talk to with a 10-hour time difference all the time, and friends in Israel who are super supportive, and people like you who have me for Shabbat all the time. But there's still this massive lack of family. There's still the fact that every single time I come home for Shabbat and I have to invite myself out. I don't have the parents calling me and saying, okay, what time are you coming for Shabbat? I have to call and say, hi, can I come for Shabbat this week? And obviously, that's a very different problem from the person who is in overdraft because the Army's salary isn't enough to pay their rent. And that's kind of just what I learned over the last 2 years of trying to advocate for the lone soldier community, is that everyone has extremely different problems and different ways to help them.
What steps have you taken to help the lone soldiers?
So in September, I made a video last year that with 10 tips about how to be a better commander to lone soldiers, and explaining kind of what lone soldiers go through in their regular life that makes it necessary for the rules of the IDF that are rules, but are easy to fall through the cracks, like being home by 12 on Fridays and getting a day off every month to do errands. I really want people to understand why lone soldiers get these extra rights that are actually just necessities in order to survive. Because, you know, if we weren't home by Fridays by 12, if we didn't get these days off to do errands, then we wouldn't have food when we came home. We wouldn't have, you know, a bed made in our apartment with things ready to spend the weekend in, and we wouldn't have basic, you know, needs met because no one else is taking care of them for us. We, you know, have to go to the bank, have to go to the Misradha, whatever, all of the government offices on our own. So I made a video trying to explain that to commanders and 10 tips on how they can be just a bit more empathetic and help in little ways in their everyday service. Right before Rosh Hashanah, the IDF sent it out by text to every commander and every lone soldier in the IDF. And that was probably one of the biggest accomplishments in my life. And people come up to me on the street all the time and say like, "Oh, you're from the lone soldier video." So I think it got spread far.
That's great. And what steps? You know, final question here. What steps do you see that we could that could be more could be done for lone soldiers?
I think again, it completely depends on who the lone soldier is. So it depends if it's someone who comes home every day and is in financial trouble. Maybe setting them up with someone who could find them a job where they could, you know, work a few hours a night or a few hours on the weekends. And then for others, it's just remembering to call them and actually ask how they're doing, because probably my entire service until that video started being made, not one person ever sat down and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that's, you know, wow. You don't have family here. You don't have, your commanders have tons of soldiers. And so it's remembering to pick up the phone and call them and treat them like they're a person who is a person outside of their being a soldier. You know, people are tough guarding the border, but they also have emotions and need to be treated like human beings. And just making them feel like not every single thing is on them, you know, not every single meal they need to cook by themselves, and whether it's inviting them for Shabbat outright or calling them up and saying, "Hey, we're in the neighborhood. Do you want to come out for a coffee?" Just things to make them feel like they're still part of this country and not just serving the country. And that is my biggest message that I hope people take away from my service and what I learned.
That's a great message. Okay, well, we should all hear it very loud and clearly. Okay, Rachel, thank you very much for joining us. This was wonderful. A real eye-opening look into the IDF spokesperson's unit, into the life of somebody who made aliyah and who joined the Army, and with great passion and with great pride. So it was wonderful having you, and I really thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Pillow Schmooz is going to take a break for 2 weeks for Pesach, so we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and look forward to being back with everybody afterwards. Rachel, thank you very much. Have a great Pesach.
Thank you for having me. Great. Have a great Pesach too.
Bye-bye.